Hello, Soundies. Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Just give me, if you would, in the chat, a thumbs up if everything's sounding okay on the stream. A little hectic this morning. I'll explain why here in just a moment. Welcome to everybody who's joined already. Rag and Bone, Michael Fraser, Jazz. We have Audio Buff here, Robert Harker, Keith McManus, Steve. Welcome to everybody. Just realized I didn't turn my hair light on. Did you notice? So we'll turn that on. All right. It's been a hectic couple of weeks for me. I apologize. I missed you last week and didn't even have a moment to get a note out to you. Work has been a little wild in terms of from the standpoint that we have our Webflow conference coming up, not this week, but the week after. My team is very involved in getting that ready. So we've been super, super busy on that. I had to make a trip out to San Francisco and back. All right, looks like the audio is sounding good, everyone. Thank you so much. Always can rely on the Soundies to provide good feedback on the sound. So thanks for that. Matt doesn't have hair to have a hair light. Okay. I'm lucky so far. It's holding out in the front. Back, it's getting a little thin. In any case, a couple of things. I want to talk about a new they actually call it audio restoration plugin called dxRevive. DX is typically the abbreviation that's used in post-production to refer to dialogue. So you have your DX, your MX, which is your music, and your FX, which are usually your sound effects. In any case, the dxRevive is sort of the next step. So we looked at Adobe Podcast a while ago, and I don't know if they've renamed that, but in essence, what you did is you uploaded a file to Adobe Podcast, no settings, it just magically processed it, cleaned it up, made it sound more like it was recorded in a studio. When it worked beautifully. If you like that sound, if it didn't work, it wasn't useful. So this is sort of a similar thing from the standpoint that it not only is it doing noise reduction pretty aggressively, quite aggressively, but it's also restoring the audio after it's applied that noise reduction. So I don't know if it's resynthesizing it in some fashion. It's replacing some frequencies based on the input from the dialogue, what it identifies as dialogue. So that's what it means by restoration. So it's not only noise reduction, it's also de-reverberation. It's also, then it's going to kind of restore its overall timbre and make it sound basically like it was recorded in a studio. So we'll see how that does. A couple of things before we get started on that. I've noticed I'm using a different light here in the room and it looks really low key. I'm going to boost that up some. All right. I don't know how much that helped. In any case, Mackie was kind enough to send over a backpack they've now made for the DLZ Creator. So we'll be trying that out here in the next little bit with pockets on the front for the power supply and any cables you need. And then a nice big pocket for the DLZ Creator itself. You can see this is where the portion with the screen, which is thicker, sits in here down at the bottom, and then the fader board up here at the top. And then also a zippered closure at the back there. Thanks to Mackie for sending that over. We'll give that a try and let you know how that works out. I got to go, Emma and I'm absolutely delighted. Emma likes old music. And so she and I went, by old, I mean 80s. She and I went to a Sting concert last night here in Salt Lake, which was a lot of fun. And I got to walk around a little bit before the show, went up to, as close as I reasonably could without alerting any security people, up to the mixing board. I couldn't get close enough to really see what it was. I'm pretty sure it was a Yamaha digital console, 3 screens, one of the bigger ones. But in any case, it was a lot of fun. The show was good. I was really glad I brought my hearing protection, which I use Heroes, which are supposed to, like, you got the little foam things you can put in your ears for ear protection. Those are okay. The Heroes are supposed to keep the attenuation a little bit more even across the spectrum. And they do okay. And so I was happy I brought that, because even a concert for older people, and Emma was one of the younger people in the audience, obviously. So even for those concerts, they still push some pretty impressive sound pressure. I don't know if impressive is the right word. They push a lot of sound pressure at those shows. And so I was really grateful to have the hearing protection, enjoyed the show immensely. And so that was a good time. All right. Okay. Welcome to all the others who have joined here recently. I'm running solo too today, by the way. Christopher is curious at how dxRevive compares to the tools in RX, as well as the Cedar Restoration Suite. And then also noting that Sting is using a Rivage PM, unless he got early access to the big DM7. It looked older. It definitely looked like an older board. So I'm not sure. Hello, Daniela. Good to have you here. The guys that run that are here in Nashville, and they only use Yamaha. Yeah, I would not at all surprised. Okay, with that, it's also allergy season, so I apologize in advance. I've got the tissues at the ready, but in the Rocky Mountains, it gets really dry this time of year, and some of the plants that bloom right before the snows arrive are the ones that get me. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at dxRevive and see what it will do for us. And we're going to look, this is just an initial look. Literally, the first time I used it was 8 minutes before we started streaming here. I just got it installed with everything else going on, but we will have a proper review of it on the main channel here in the next couple of weeks. So with that, let's go ahead and switch on over to the Mac here. Make sure that's coming through okay. All right, we've got DaVinci Resolve up here. We've got a little audio sample, and we've got dxRevive. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off and just give you a sense for where we're starting. And actually, I'm going to normalize the audio levels here. Whoops, undo. We want to select the entire thing. Okay. Normalize this. Let's see if we can do that. Okay. Let's just see where we're starting. So I'm going to go ahead and play that back, and let's see where we start.
Recently, I had to troubleshoot some computer issues, and I am not really used to doing that. I'm an obviously everyday computer user, but I don't know much about fixing issues or, finding out why software is doing something. But the other day, I was having issues with Logic, actually, because I had a weird plugin that was like messing it up. And it turns out all I had to do was move that plugin to a different storage area. But before I figured that out, I actually had to do some terminal commands, and that was my first time using terminal.
Okay, so that is where we're starting. And I turned it off. I turned it down to 0%. Let's go ahead and run through it again. And this is the Pro version. The Pro version has a few different settings. For example, you can use different algorithms. There's Studio, and I'll need to look more into that. But in essence, you can choose a voice enhancement algorithm. And again, this addresses reverb, noise, spectral imbalances, clipping, codec artifacts, and any sort of band limitations. Like, for example, recording telephones that sound very sort of nasally. That's what the Studio one does. I don't know what the Retain does. What does Retain? This fixes noise, codec artifacts, and band limitations. So this one's not going to be quite as aggressive necessarily. But let's start with the studio and see what we get here. I'm going to go ahead and play through again. I'm starting at 0% and we'll increase that. We also have some other presets up here, so we can tell it what we want it to do. So for example, if we have a telephone call, we can do a phone restore, which is probably going to add some additional high frequency content. It's essentially synthesizing it. There's a low end restore, a full revive, 4-band, 3-band, and 2-band neutral if you want to keep things a little less studio sounding and a little bit more neutral. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. And I'm just going to adjust this one big knob, the percentage. Here we go. And that wasn't it. Here we go again.
Recently, I had to troubleshoot some computer issues, and I am not really used to doing that. I'm an obviously everyday computer user, but I don't know much about fixing issues or, finding out why software is doing something. But the other day, I was having issues with Logic, actually, because I had a weird plugin that was like messing it up. And it turns out all I had to do was move that plugin to a different storage area. But before I figured that out, I actually had to do some terminal commands, and that was my first time using terminal.
Okay. Question. Did you hear the processing? It did, here's my assessment. It did a really impressive job. However, I could still hear it cutting in and out, especially during her breaths. It has difficulty distinguishing between a breath and a steady state fan noise behind it. So definitely some challenges there. That's my assessment. I also, right around the breaths, right as she stopped talking, I heard some kind of cutting in and out. So definitely doing a pretty, impressive job, no doubt. But let's go ahead and grab another sample here. I'm curious in the chat here. Let me know your assessment. I'm curious what you heard there too. That's what I heard on that first sample there. So let's grab another sample here. Let's get a really reverberant. This is Danny's really almost manic description of baking bread on Thanksgiving morning a couple of years ago. And where did that one go? Let's see, we've got clipped, declick, decrackle, rustle. Here it is, it's the reverb. Okay, we'll pop this in here. I'm gonna go ahead and normalize this. Let's go to -23 or 4. Normalize. Okay. Let's go ahead and bump this back down to 0. Come on, there we go. Down to 0. Okay, here's where we're starting.
This morning I baked a loaf of bread. Apparently, even though I wasn't baking a turkey this year, I still am used to getting up early and cooking something. I haven't baked a loaf of bread for probably, I'm not even sure how many years, but I wanted to make sure I used the jar of yeast that I sought out last year in 2020 before it goes bad. So we'll see how this loaf of bread turns out. I baked it quite a long time with a water bath, and I think it'll be all right. So that's what I did this morning. Got up early, mixed up a bunch of ingredients, and made a loaf of bread.
Okay. Now, if I'm looking for that actually did okay. When you push it hard, it started sounding really robotic, and things were not so great. But in any case, there was Hampton actually says yes. When you turn it up over 80%, almost like high frequency tweeting at times. So in any case, I felt like if you were going for, if you're working in post-production and you needed something that sounded a little cleaner and less distracting, I think this achieves that without question. But I think the amount that you apply is really important here. And we could also go with some of the, again, like the other algorithms. I don't think retain wouldn't actually does it dereverberate? Let's check that again. No, so that's not going to take care of reverberation. You'd have to go with the studio one to get that. This is the one that does reverb, noise, spectral imbalances, clipping, codec, artifacts, and band limitations. So in any case, I think that did really well. In fact, I think that did better than, in my experience, the dReverb in Isotope RX. I think this did better, and it was certainly simpler to get it set up and running. So nice work on that, Accentize, who's the name of the company. By the way, this is 100% transparency. They sent this plugin to me to evaluate. So they haven't, obviously, this is live. They haven't told me what to say. This is my live assessment with my own audio samples. All right, well, let's see what happens if I want to actually go back to that first sample, but move into the other mode here. Let's do that. Let's go back into the retain mode and back over to this audio sample. And let's play through that, and I will adjust the amount it does back up. So here we go.
Recently, I had to troubleshoot some computer issues, and I am not really used to doing that. I'm an obviously everyday computer user, but I don't know much about fixing issues or, finding out why software is doing something. But the other day, I was having issues with Logic, actually, because I had a weird plugin that was like messing it up. And it turns out all I had to do was move that plugin to a different storage area. But before I figured that out, I actually had to do some terminal commands, and that was my first time using terminal.
Okay, definitely still got the kind of cutting in and out. I don't know if you picked up on that as well, especially at the ends of phrases where Emma stops talking, then you hear just a few milliseconds of the fan noise before it cuts in and starts reducing that. So it's definitely still there. I'm going to address this right here. It's close to trash. It depends. I think it depends. I respectfully disagree that I think there are cases where, yeah, that's not acceptable. I respectfully disagree. I think there are cases where this would be better than doing nothing, especially on the reverb sample. I think it needs to be done tastefully. I wouldn't call it trash or close to trash. Just a respectful dialogue. Don't 100% agree, but there's some thoughts there. A lot of people talking about iLock. Yeah, I mean, that's how I agree. It's frustrating at times. I didn't have to use iLock with Isotope products, so I'm not sure there. You can actually, I was able to authorize those directly to a machine. So my experience was a little bit different there. Jazz says, that's impressive, no robot voice like in Waves. Oh, it's iLock licensing. That's the trash. Got it. Okay, now I understand. Apologies. Thanks for the clarification. I don't love iLock is it's a pain. I'm not going to talk about that right now. It is a pain. But it's also a pain that when people make software, I work in the software industry. It's a pain. There's so much piracy. I don't know that iLock fixes that, but I understand why they try to do something to address the issue. Anyway, big topic there. There also, by the way, there are two versions of dxRevive. There is a standard version and there is a pro version. And let's just go there to the Accentize website. And let me just switch back over to that so you can see that here. We're going to go ahead and accept those. So they've got a discount that goes through the end of September. But let's go to their product page. That's what we're interested in. All right, so the differences between the two, apologies for the moving here. First of all, they're local processing. So that's where it differs from Adobe Podcast or whatever they have changed the name of that product to, which is basically a web service that you upload your audio file to or your video file to. Maybe it's only audio file. In any case, it processes it. You don't get any settings or parameters. Then you can download the resulting audio file. And in that case, all of it's online. So I think what they're doing, if I had to guess, they're taking your audio and they're using that to train their models. So they are using your audio to train what that service is doing. In the case of Accentize dxRevive, it's 100% local processing. So I don't believe it's sending information back to the company. I think they've already done it. They're training on it. And in any case, there we go. And maybe in Adobe Podcast, they do it looks like Dive Into with James says that they evidently have a strength setting now. They didn't when I first tried it, so it's good to know they've actually adjusted or added that, because that was actually sorely missing. So anyway, that's what the base or the standard version is here. Local processing. It also is trained on multiple languages and accents, and it can also work with multiple people talking at the same time. Let's see. I don't know if I have any samples right here. I think actually maybe I do have a sample we can use. Single knob workflow, and it just comes with the studio sound algorithm. So it doesn't come with the the retain algorithm, which is what this one also includes. So in addition, this has the retain algorithm. It has a spectral focus mode to fine tune for different frequencies. That's what we saw earlier when I was over here. I believe that's going to be these different here. So you can focus on the low end, you can do a full revive, phone restore, or you can break it into bands if you wanted to do that. So that's what that's referring to, if I had to guess. It also has an A/B comparison, so you can compare before and after, presets for restore phone and low end, and iLok licensed, whether you like it or not. I didn't have to use an iLok key to license this. This is the pro version I'm using. I did not have to use a key, so I just did the software version of that. So that's how it worked for me. Okay. Let's go back here and let's try a few more samples here. I want to do a clipped sample. And let's see how this does here. And what I'm going to do here is let's first normalize this so that it's not, this may trick it, I don't know. We're going to just go ahead and try it. So we bumped it down. Let's reduce the overall effect of this. Go ahead and play through this and see where we're starting. In this episode, we'll take a look at the Shure Duraplex lavalier microphone, which is a specialty microphone that is water and dust resistant. Okay, let's turn it on. In this episode, we'll take a look at the Shure Duraplex lavalier microphone, which is a specialty microphone that is water and dust resistant. I need to go back to the studio algorithm. In this episode, we'll take a look at the Shure Duraplex lavalier microphone, which is a specialty microphone that is water and dust resistant. And without. In this episode, we'll take a look at the Shure Duraplex lavalier microphone, which is a specialty microphone that is water and dust resistant. Actually, that did a pretty nice job there. So for clipping on the studio algorithm, that did pretty well. Not too bad. Okay, let's check some others here and see what else we can resolve. What about a hum? I want to get a really nasty hum. Let's see here. We'll get the dialogue isolate noise sample, which I created to use dialogue isolate, but we're going to use this instead. Breath control, match boom. We'll get this really nasty one with fan, ringtones, and dialogue. Let's just see where this one is. Let's start with this, turn this off, and play it through.
It was easier to know it than to explain why I know it. If you were asked to prove that 2 and 2 made 4, you might find...
Okay, that one, we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. That's essentially this one. But on this one, we've added some additional things here. So let's go ahead and normalize that. There we go. There is one with some really, here we go. Let's get a complex hum. Hear what that sounds like. Have some phone.
It was easier to know it than to explain why I know it. If you were...
Okay, let's normalize that.
It was easier to know it than to explain why I know it. If you were asked to prove that 2 and 2 made...
Not that one. That one sounds like it's already been processed. I find the UI here is a little too dark for my taste.
So I read about an interesting bird yesterday called the ocellated turkey, which lives down in Mexico and Central America, just in a very small area. And it's related to the American wild turkey, but it also has coloring that's kind of... I'd like to see one sometime.
That sounds like it's already been processed, so we need to get our samples fixed up. In any case, let's go back to this noise sample. I'm in the studio algorithm. Oh, it turned itself back on. Okay, let's go back. The complex hum. Okay, here we go. It turned itself back on. Rascals. Okay. There we go.
It was easier to know it than to explain why I know it. If you were asked to prove that 2 and 2 made 4, you might find some difficulty, and yet you are quite sure of the fact.
Okay, so that's a super complex hum with lots of multiple fundamentals, and of course, everything up above that as well. So this did not do that well. I heard it kind of coming in and out. Let's go with a simple hum. It's basically one fundamental, and see how it does there. I think it was doing a lot better there. So let's pull that down to 0, and we'll start here.
There we go. It'll be on for a minute or two. So I read about an interesting bird yesterday called the ocellated turkey, which...
It's not quite loud enough, so let's... Okay, here we go.
So I read about an interesting bird yesterday called the ocellated turkey, which lives down in Mexico and Central America, just in a very small area. And it's related to the American wild turkey, but it also has coloring that's kind of like a peacock. So it's a very interesting animal. It has a blue head and some, I think, red wattles. It's very pretty though. And it is a turkey relative. I'd like to see one.
Okay, that actually did pretty well on the simple, kind of straightforward hums. Much more impressive results from my point of view. So definitely does a pretty decent job there. So far I would say with steady state noise, it definitely cuts in and out some. Let's go back to that just really quickly. Here we go.
Recently, I had to troubleshoot some computer issues, and I am not really used to doing that. I'm an obviously everyday computer user, but I don't know much about fixing issues or, finding out why software is doing something. But
this is where I'd probably go back more to dialogue isolate or kind of a more traditional denoiser, and focus less on getting rid of all of the noise and just making it less prominent is how I would probably approach it. With the dReverb, it did really well. I was really quite happy with that, as long as you don't push it too far. Let's try it on this sample here. We haven't done it here. Start as low as possible. There we go. All right, and here's another recording. This time what we're going to do is have a variety of things going. We've got the fan, of course, but we also have some phone ringtones. And let's try a couple different. And this is going to give us a sense for how things go with while I'm talking, and there's also the tone. There are a bunch of different tones that we're going with here, just so that you can get a sense for how well this does at removing different tones. And let's go ahead and cut it there and see. Okay, did pretty well with the fan there. Obviously the spectral, the discontinuous things, as I call them, the ringtones, it's not going to take care of those, but anyway, pretty decent job. So let's take a look back at the chat here and see how things are going. All right. Daniela has given us a little more context here. It looks like privacy is an absolute in front above inequality. Wait for products on my buy list like Soothe 2, but as long as they use iLock, no buy. Christopher wants to know how I clipped the Duraplex. I don't remember. That was a long time ago, but yeah, we intentionally clipped it. I think I was holding it really close. But yeah, the declip sounded pretty decent. I was pretty happy with that for sure. Try the A/B comparison option. Yeah, we can do that as well. Agreement. We get the declip did sound pretty good. Resolve feature I would like for my older eyes is setting that allows me to set the color and intensity of the font, which is dark gray. Yeah, I think they need to. When things get here's my issue. When sometimes finding if this depending on the lighting as well. Finding the kind of the top bar of this floating window is sometimes tricky. When I'm looking over here and then I look back quickly, it takes a second to figure out where the bar is because the contrast between the background and that bar is pretty low. So I know, for example, when you look at Pro Tools, I think a lot of people think, oh, Pro Tools, and I think this too, it looks really outdated. But I think they have put some work into sort of optimizing it for workflow, for getting things done. So yeah, I would love to see something like that too, Robert. Camille wants to know, can you look into your crystal ball to see whether Blackmagic will soon have a 4K version of the ATEM Extreme with better mic preamps? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would think they would do something like that, although I don't know that that will be in the form factor of one of the minis. It may be more of a rack mount, or it looks like they're also moving more towards a control surface and switcher all in one. So instead of having a separate control surface and a switcher that's a rack mounted switcher for their line above the ATEM minis, I see they seem to be moving towards, well, they've not moving towards, they have, I think some of the newer ones are kind of all in one units. And then they actually have some big control surfaces as well, or panels as they call them. So I think, a 4K version of the ATEM Mini with XLR-based microphone preamplifiers, I think is probably a long shot. A 4K version of the ATEM Mini with 3.5 millimeter unbalanced inputs that are better. Like if they do 4K, I bet you they'll put the same preamps in them. That would be sad. I'd love to see something cleaner, but that's my guess, Camille. I don't know for sure what they're going to do. And also, thank you for the super chat as well. But I think for 4K and better mic preamps, you're probably looking at some of the higher end switchers from them. They have to differentiate the product lines, and that's probably one of the ways they'll choose to do that if I had to guess. All right. Definitely struggling with the ringtone. Yeah, for those spectral denoise kind of jobs, this is not the tool for us. I don't understand that, Daniela. Sorry about that. I think Wave's clarity works better with discontinuous noises. I think you're right. And also RX Dialogue Isolate also does. For new ATEM Extreme, would really like to see balanced inputs instead of the cheapo unbalanced 3.5 millimeter they have now. Yes, I would too, but I doubt, maybe I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, but I don't see them putting that on the ATEM Mini models. I see them making perhaps a kind of a mid-range one that's not a rack mount, but that is a higher end unit, is my guess. Wave's clarity can get very thin and I assume you mean robotic when you push it. I am close to blind and use DaVinci Resolve with Braille and a controller, so it works well for me and others that are eye handicapped persons. The GUI will adapt to break any of the standards for the hardware. Oh, okay. That makes a little bit more sense. Thank you for that, Daniela. All right. So that's everything I have prepared for today. Again, in the final review, I'll dig in with better samples, probably more samples, and kind of just demonstrate what this is capable of. Here's my upshot if I have to summarize. Useful tool, for sure. Not perfect for everything, but a very useful tool. And in fact, I think it did better at de-reverberation than any of the other de-reverb tools I've used. It did pretty well for steady state noises. It did pretty well for simple hums. And actually, let's drop that complex hum back in there. Did we do that as well? I think we did. We put that back in there as well. No, we didn't. Oh, yeah, we did. Right here. Let's do that again really quickly. I'm going to switch back over.
It was easier to know it than to explain why
Nope, not so good. Let's play with it just a little bit.
I know it. If you were asked to prove that 2 and 2 made 4, you might find some difficulty, and yet...
No, that's where RX did really, really well. I was surprised, in fact, at how well RX did with that exact sample. So I would definitely go back to RX for that. So here, I think one way you can think of this is that none of the tools out there are perfect. This is a useful tool for certain scenarios. Others may be more useful. So I think what you're going to see is post-production professionals are probably going to be using a whole variety of tools, whichever one happens to work best on any given sample. So there's going to be some variety there. So that's been my general experience with plugins, and any of the denoise and audio restoration plugins that I've used is that they each kind of have their own different things. All right. All right, James, thank you so much for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Any thoughts on the Allen and Heath CG digital mixers already? I haven't looked into them. I saw that they were released. We can go ahead and pull up their site here. My sense is I think they'll be useful for a lot of people. They're probably... Let's see, go ahead and allow, here we go. Switching on over. So here are the new CQ ultra compact digital mixers. And let's just go into the product page for those. Yeah, I can see the utility of these. Probably, I don't like to use touchscreens when I can avoid it. So I wouldn't replace my SQ with this, but I think this has a place for sure. And there are certain people for which this would be a really nice option that need to stay really, really mobile. So this one is basically 20 in, 8 out digital mixer, and then you connect to it with an app, I presume, like with an iPad. These do have some controls and a touch screen, the 12 and the 18. So there's definitely, obviously, you know, Behringer has this whole series of these, and I think a lot of people have gotten used to that format of mixing. And if you don't mind using an iPad to mix, then cool. I think it's a fine option. I have been very happy with my Allen and Heath SQ5, and they make good products. So I would think that this would be a good fit for people that want to use like a tablet to mix instead, or the touchscreen that it comes with. And they need to keep things really, really small. Okay. Staying on this same topic here, Christopher, CQ looks like a nice upgrade from the QU, brings them up to FPGA processing, but they're also really entry level. Lack of any external connectivity, even S-Link is a big limitation. Okay, so they can't put stage boxes and run the stage box back to the mixing station or desk. So they're not really made for that. I think these are more for bands that do their own mixing, like small acts that basically they say, yeah, you can open for this band, but you have to do all your own stuff and you have to get all your stuff on and off stage within 15 minutes. That may be what this is more geared at. I'm not sure, but that's one thing that I see. Separate control surface allows you to upgrade the switcher electronics separately, kind of like monitors that last. Control surfaces with buttons and lights are expensive to build. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense to me. And I understand not everyone wants a big, huge, I mean, even the SQ5, which is their smallest SQ mixer, it's not the kind of thing that you stick in a backpack and take with you. I'm curious on the pricing on these. I haven't looked at that. So let's look at that just out of curiosity. Go to our friends over at B&H Photo. And we'll go ahead and put in the, let's see, CQ. Alan Heath CQ. Okay, so the 18T is 1200, the 12T is $899, and then the rack mount stage box is 1000. And then of course they have the bags that go with them, or the rack mount kits. Excuse me, just a moment. I have a sneeze coming on, or maybe not. Maybe I'll get lucky. So yeah, they're definitely more affordable than something like the SQ series of mixers. The SQ5 at this point, I believe. Let's switch on back and see what the SQ5 comes in at now. Last I checked, I think it was $4,000. Yeah, $4,000 for the SQ5 now. When I bought it, it was $2,500 when it first came out. Isn't that interesting? Inflation is real, especially for these more niche products that they're not mass producing. So, cheaper than the Yamaha DM3. I'd probably still go with the DM3D at 2K since it supports 16 channels Dante in and out, and SQ has gone up a lot in price. Yeah, the DM3 looks pretty interesting. And I completely agree that there's a place for the CQ. It just depends on your needs. Jazz says, this is not for Sting. Probably not. Now Audio Buff, we're talking your game. Okay. And then a question from Faccieri. Anyone have suggestions for fingerless gloves to boom up with? A few biking gloves I tried had a grippy rubber palm side. I don't know about fingerless, but mechanics with an X at the end gloves are something that I know Alan Williams over at SoundSpeed uses. I have a pair of them. They've been pretty good. They're nice and thin, really, really thin. And those work nicely, but I don't know if you can make them fingerless yourself with scissors. But I don't know of any that are fingerless out of the door. But if anyone has suggestions, would love to hear them here. Renee, welcome. It's good to have you here. Daniela wants to know if I verified the European battery laws. Let me give you the context for this. So we launched a video on Friday about the Rode Wireless Pro. And I mentioned in there that, Rode, they really needed to do something about the inbuilt batteries that are not user replaceable. And Daniela said that there's actually some legislation, or I don't know if it's already been voted into law in Europe, in the European Union. But in any case, Daniela says that will be a big game changer for consumers as well as for professionals. The question is related to the Rode Pro Series for their wireless microphones. Yeah, I don't know what the status of that is, Daniela, but We see that government bodies and their legislation are changing the tech world now. So Apple just released their new iPhone with USB-C inputs, and that was largely driven, from what I can tell, by the European laws, which basically imposed that. Said if you're gonna sell something that's rechargeable, I don't know exactly what the law looks like, but in essence, they were compelled to change their product. And I don't know that they could have even. I think they've learned their lesson from the 2016 MacBooks when they moved to USB-C. They got rid of all the ports except for USB-C and 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And then they sold all these dongles to make everything else work. No HDMI port, no SD card slot, no USB-A. And they haven't gone back to USB-A, but they have gone back. They now include SD card slots and HDMI output ports on the higher end Pro laptops. But I think they learned their lesson that dongles are not the answer for a pro level laptop. So that I'm appreciative of that, but I think this is also changing that world. And if there's a European Union battery law, I would love to see that, because to me it's getting ridiculous to have at the very, very, very least, if a company is going to have inbuilt batteries that are not user replaceable, they need to provide a means whereby those devices can have the batteries replaced, ideally affordably. But I don't know what that law looks like and what they're going to say there. So, hello again, Renee. Yeah, so that's the mechanics gloves that Fachiri is talking about here. Okay. Costco goat leather gloves are thin, comfortable, and very hard wearing and soft at the same time. Oh, very good. Good to know. There's an option worth looking at there. All right, we have about 10 more minutes. If you have a question, would love for you to drop that in. Nobody had one submitted ahead of time. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. If you can just tag it with @CurtisJetAudio, that'll make it really easy for me to see that it's a question, and I'll get to that for sure, and we can bring it in front of the esteemed community here to get some input for you, hopefully. So just a note for, again, this time of year is a pretty busy time for me at work. We have 2 more weeks or a week and a half until our customer conference, or not customer conference, that was my previous employer, the Webflow conference. So next week there will not be a live stream, but I will be back on our regular schedule the week after that. So that would be October. Let's take a look at that exact date here. Here's September. So October the 8th, we should be back on our regular schedule. So that's 2 weeks from today. All right. Let's take a look at the chat and see what we have going on here. Fachiri asks, what do you think about the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K? I did see that they announced that. I haven't taken a look at it. I believe they changed, let's take a look at it right now. I believe they changed the camera mount, if I'm not mistaken. And here it is. Switch on over to this. And we'll take that down here. It's a full frame sensor, so they've gone to a big sensor instead of, or the 35 millimeter sensor instead of the Super 35. So, excuse me, that should be, for those that like that look, that's good. Dynamic range is right around 13 stops, so it's not the same as some of the other cinema cameras out there, but I mean, it's what, $2,500? That's pretty impressive, if I'm not mistaken. So bigger sensor, can shoot open gate. That's good. You can rig them up. They call it wide dynamic range. That's interesting. Again, it's 13 stops, which is quite a bit of dynamic range, but most hybrid cameras are doing that or more these days. So here they're showing it in different frame rates. So you can do slow motion. carbon fiber polycarbonate composite. So it's basically carbon fiber and plastic, which is, I think, always been the case. Yeah, I think the main thing is that it's a larger sensor with an optical low pass filter. So, and I'm trying to remember, where does it talk about the mount, the camera mount? It's an L mount. And then you have to get an adapter if you want to go to other. So before they used EF mounts. Anyway, I think that'll be a fine camera for a lot of people who are into that. And it lost the internal neutral densities, so that's a little bit of a downside as well. I have become so I like those. I will say this: it's not going to make me move from a Canon C70 to a Pocket 6K. But if somebody is looking to get a nice full frame look for less money than you would spend on a full frame, I mean, I guess like an FX6, is an FX6 even full frame? I don't even know. I think it is. I'm kind of camera illiterate at this point because I just haven't spent my mind hasn't been in that space a whole lot lately. I try to stay in the audio space and let the camera people nerd out about the cameras. Although I do have cameras and I do have to. All right. Christopher, his take on this is they still using that very not cinema camera body makes it really hard to rig it properly. Yeah, you had to buy a camera cage and then rig around that, which is what I did on my original 6K. Are you working on another Webflow video? I cannot say for sure, but I do work on video. There will be plenty of video coming out in the not too distant future. I will say that. Okay. Futuri, so we can have our camera dialogue here. Futuri says, I don't think it's a whiff, more like a foul ball, but I do think they should have redesigned the body. Renee talks about the Leica Q3, which I have no clue what that even is. I mean, I know what Leica is. I have not followed Leica at all. Speaking of batteries, Sony's recent FX30 firmware update creates problems with third-party batteries not displaying the amount of charge. And FX6 is full frame. Good. When you use a C500 as your webcam, does anything else really matter? Let's be okay. Fair point. Touche. However, it is a C200 to be fair, not a 500. Different story there. This is an interesting one from Christopher. Any thoughts on Shure's SM7 something they are teasing for the anniversary? I will be surprised, Christopher, if it's anything other than a cosmetic update. Honestly, that's my guess. It's going to be more of a cosmetic anniversary edition as opposed to something where they actually change the SM7 in terms of performance in any way. That's just a guess, but that's for those that aren't aware. I think that's coming this week. I don't know the exact date. I think it's the 27th. But they've been teasing that a little bit. I've noticed over on Twitter, and they've got evidently something cooking up there. So excited to see what that is. But my guess is it's going to be a cosmetic thing, unless anyone else knows. We'll wait till the 27th, I believe it is, to see what they say. In fact, let's go to their website right now and see if they've got anything up on the front that shows. They've got the GLDX or GLXD. We'll go ahead and accept those. Maybe they don't, I don't know where they have, if they're teasing that on their page. Here's the SM7B. Yeah, I don't see the teasing here. They've been doing it on Twitter for sure. But there may be something coming here. All right. Also, any thoughts on Deity releasing the DLTX and the bow tie antenna? Well, let's be clear. Have they released those or have they announced them? Because Deity has a tendency to announce things way in advance and then they're not available for a while. Anyway, the bow tie antennas, so those have become a little bit more popular to bag mount, basically dipole array antennas to your bag, just so you can stay nimble and move around a lot, but get better reception than a whip antenna would potentially provide. But I think orientation is still going to be really pretty important. I think that's fine. We'll see how they perform. The DLTX I haven't looked into, but let's take a look at that right now. Let's go to Deity. And I'm going to switch over to that. And let's go up here to wireless. And let's look at the DLTX transmitter. So this is basically just part of the Theos system. It's just you can buy the transmitter independently, right? So you can essentially buy it as a body pack transmitter. Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. That's cool. I have no issues with that, that's for sure. No, it's different than this one. So the DLTX is different. No, so you see, I'm behind on this. That's how out of it I've been, how focused on work I've been. So how is it different? Let's ask that question. So Fuchuri, how is it different? Deity is knocking it out of the park at the moment. They also said the delay for the Theos is to implement true antenna diversity. That's good. I do like that. I'm not sure knocking out of the park is what I would call it. My question is why wasn't antenna diversity part of the original plan? I'm glad that they're delaying and going to do that, but my heavens, why was that not part of the original plan? This is not true diversity. This is antenna diversity. It had there are two antennas on the receiver. I don't understand why that wasn't. But I'm glad they're doing it. So that's cool. Theos is supposed to ship in October now. The DLTX, I believe, Andrew said 2024 Q1 on the Gotham Sound live stream. Bowtie, I think he said, was pretty soon. Oh, right. DLTX, that's right. I did hear that, actually. So DLTX is a LEMO 3 connector and 48-volt phantom power for boom use. Yeah, that's cool. All right. Yeah. So that's cool. That's good news. I'm pleased to see that. I think that'll be good. LEMO 3 connector is a better choice, so you don't have to use some big adapter. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I think Deity coming soon is a familiar phrase. They have a tendency to, from my point of view, my observation is that they have a tendency to make announcements quite a bit in advance, maybe arguably from some people's point of view, too far in advance. There are lots of other companies that don't really announce things until they're actually ready to ship them or very, very close to, like they're already into production or into manufacturing. Deity has a tendency to announce even before the product is fully engineered, which is, exciting. They're getting lots of attention that way. They're getting lots of eyeballs. We just have to wait and see if they can actually deliver. To me, I guess I'm a little hurt, or not hurt. I'm a little scratching my head at like how they were designing Theos without antenna diversity. I'm at a loss for words, I guess is the best way to say that. In any case, let's end this on a positive note. I hope you're all doing well out there and making some great sound. Thanks for keeping me up. I would say don't get too trapped up in the gear that you have today. Get out there and make something great. And we will talk to you in 2 weeks from today. Take care, everybody.